What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another wealth webinar. Thanks for joining us today. Today, this is going to be a pretty important webinar we're going to do because we're going to dive into Kyle Busch, the Busch family. And those of you that turn your TVs on still, you'll know this family as the NASCAR family, right? The racing family. They're pretty well known, pretty famous, but it's all over the news. And by now, I'm sure you've seen it. And, you know, the news headlines are the $8.5 million IUL scandal. What Kyle Busch's lawsuit teaches us about too good to be true policies. Well, that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to educate you all about IULs, Indexed Universal Life, and I'm going to then also show you at the very end a little bit about the policies we use for the infinite banking concept, which are specially designed and engineered whole life policies. So you've got two permanent life insurance policies, two different chassis. One has been around for well over almost 200 years. That is the whole life, if you haven't figured that out. The other one, I don't know, 20, 25 years, maybe I'm off by a couple, but it's a relatively newer product called an Indexed Universal Life. And the Indexed Universal life policies are the most predominant permanent life insurance policies you can buy in the industry today. They are sold by just about every financial advisor. We are up against them all the time with our boring old whole life policies. But you know, for years and years, and if you just saw, we were playing a video, and that video has got to be 5, 6 years old. We have been for a long time talking about and warning you about Indexed Universal Life, the problems inherently with the way the product is being sold, because a lot of what's going on with the Kyle Busch scandal, if you will, we can call it whatever we want, is a misrepresentation of the policy, a misrepresentation of the truth. That's really what it is. It's not that the product so much is flawed. If you understand the product, now see, that's key. The product inherently is just another product, right? It's like going out and do you want a Kit Kat or a Snickers? It's just whatever you're in the mood for. The problem is the way that it's sold, the way that it's marketed, the way that it's put out there. And you know what? The one thing I've said a million times, I feel like it's been a million, maybe a couple hundred times, is that IULs are predominantly the choice that most advisors sell because they're one of the highest commissioned products out there. And we're going to hear more about that with this story. But my goal today is to educate you all on Indexed Universal Life through the eyes and through the story of what's going on with the Busch family. It's a high profile case. And the number one thing you all should do, if any of you have been exposed to IULs, which I know many of you probably have, your advisors, again, me and Craig were just up against an advisor recently trying to take one of our best clients, and you know, hopefully that client has seen the articles and seen the runs, because, well, it's not what it's supposed to be. But I want to open up because I got to be very sensitive and compliant with this right here. This is very important. We are not affiliated with Kyle Busch. We are not affiliated with Pacific Life or any other party mentioned today. All views are our own. And this webinar is for educational purposes only. This does not constitute legal, financial, or tax advice. I have to read that because, listen, there's a lot of eyeballs on this case right now. And there's a lot of people out there, a lot of the same people who have been haters for a while, and they're still haters, who are out there making a living selling Indexed Universal Life, whose names I cannot mention. Many of you know who these folks are. You've seen them on Instagram and primarily TikTok, and they're out there saying that IUL is the greatest thing out there. Now, I'm not here to tell you that IUL isn't the greatest thing because I don't know your needs and goals, but what I certainly am here to tell you is that for Kyle Busch, this product was missold, and that is exactly what we're going to do. Now, let me go one more step before I dive fully into this, is I want to talk a little bit about the Nash Institute, okay? This is a newsletter that was just put out by the Nash Institute. Now, the Nash Institute has a program for IBC professionals, and it's called the Practitioners Organization. And we are all IBC practitioners. Every mentor who you would speak to on a call is an IBC practitioner. And this came out, this was in light of the Kyle Busch statement from Nash Institute regarding Indexed Universal Life policies. And basically what it goes on to say, and I'm just going to kind of hit the the highlighted parts. I'm happy to share this with any of you. Matter of fact, maybe I'll have Shauna send this out to all the attendees. Would everybody like that? Would everybody like to read what the Nash Institute has to say about this? If you would, put I in the chat, and what we'll do is we have a list of all the people who are on here. We will send it to all attendees. But right here is what it says is the authorized IBC practitioner program course manual clearly outlines why the use of IUL or other non-participating products is not recommended for the implementation of infinite banking concepts. In accordance with this guideline, the IBC practitioner agreement strictly prohibits practitioners from marketing or selling anything other than dividend-paying whole life policies to clients seeking to practice the infinite banking concept. Practitioners are required to adhere to these professional standards. Violations of this policy constitute grounds for the loss of the IBC practitioner's status. The creators of the IBC practitioner program endorsed this approach because it is proven to work for those seeking to implement a privatized banking system. They cannot vouch for other products or strategies and do not wish to risk the reputation of the IBC program from untested methods. And then it just goes on to just say the unfortunate outcomes of the Kyle Busch and all this stuff. But that's what we're going to get into. I just wanted to start with that because, listen, this isn't just our opinion, okay? This is also the opinion of the Nash Institute. Now, let's dive into this. And I've got so many notes here, folks, and I've got some slides that we're going to play here as we get going. But I just want to preface, I'm not here to bash IULs, okay? I've done plenty of that in my time. I'm here to literally call out the facts, to call out the misrepresentations, to call out exactly what happened here, because if it happened here for this family, I'm sure it's happened for lots of you. We have 136 people on, and a lot more people will watch this. Thousands will probably watch this on my YouTube channel. And I just want all of you to know that this case will be just one of many. Maybe hundreds, maybe thousands, who knows? But this will not be the only one. There are lots of people coming out of the woodwork saying, hey, listen, I got the same thing going on. But they haven't stood up and said, hey, you know, I want to sue or I want to do this. They're just like, oh, well, I just misrepresented. I just lost money. But this case will break this whole thing open. And you know what? We've been saying this is going to happen. But I thought it was going to happen when the whole market fell apart. Because remember, an index universal life policy, and I'm going to draw some stuff on the board about them. An index universal life policy is a permanent life insurance policy that participates in the market in some index. Now, there's not just any one index anymore. There used to just be the S&P 500 that these have, but now there's lots of them. So here's the thing. The summary of this lawsuit states that the Busch family deposited $10.4 million in premiums into their Pac Life policy, and they're claiming an $8.5 million loss. Pacific Life and Rodney Smith, who's the named agent in the lawsuit, filed on October 14, 2025. I'm just reading this right off of the articles. The alleged misrepresentation, breach of fiduciary duty, and negligent misrepresentation violations of North Carolina's unfair and deceptive trade practices. So effectively, that's what this is. The Bushes call this a scam. That's effectively what they're doing. Now, let me ask, have any of you ever felt unsure about what you actually bought when it comes to a financial product? If you have, put it over there in the chat. Have any of you ever felt unsure about a financial product that you've bought? And I also want to know, how many of you have heard of indexed universal life before? Actually, let me say this. How many of you have not heard of indexed universal life, commonly known as IUL? Let me just share my screen really quick. And I want to play a video because obviously we're going to have to go here. All right. So again, another disclaimer. You guys all signed into the Zoom knowing, you know, that we are not affiliated with Kyle Busch, Pac Life, or any parties mentioned today. All views are on your own. I already read that. But here it is. So this is just one of the many articles out there. And then I've got a video, but I'm going to have Stephen play the video because I'm having issues with mine. But right here, we've always tried to take the hardest chapters of our life and all the different things they've gone through and use them for good. Today is one of those moments. They're sounding the alarm on a hidden insurance scam involving policies being sold by Pac Life and other insurance carriers. So that's kind of the whole thing. So when we come to case, like the case number, I'm sure it's public information.
Chris, we're not. We're not seeing your slide.
Yeah,
Just the
I know.
disclaimers up.
All right, so it's pointless for me to try to show mine. Stephen, can you share?
Yeah, definitely.
Here we are in New York City. Samantha and I are at one of the major news stations here in New York City. And as many of you may have seen, we have a press release out that we are in litigation with Pacific Life in regards to IUL policies and insurance policies that are also retirement policies for planning for our future. And unfortunately, ours did not go well.
Yeah, as you'll hear when this broadcast comes out, it was a major scam. We tried to do what we thought was best for our family, for Brexton and Lennox. We were trying to be financially responsible for them and plan for our future. And little did we know that by investing money in this scam, it's all gone. And so the reason we came out here today is, as you guys know, who've followed us for a while, every time God puts a struggle in our path, we're going to try to use it for good. And so we're out here speaking out about what happened, because this just isn't happening to athletes and celebrities.
Right.
This is happening to teachers, police officers, veterans. This is
Widows.
happening to widows. These are people who are 70 years old. They have nothing else to fall back on. These are people who are, they've worked hard, they've made a small business, they are ready to retire, and they buy into these scams and they lose absolutely everything. And so, Kyle and I will use this platform to try to do all the good that we can. And so we're going to keep fighting Pacific Life, and we're going to show the world that this was a huge and utter scam.
That's right. So tune in for further updates as we come along further in the case.
All right, so Craig, could you just scroll down just 2 slides after that with the another article? I just want to read this right here. So this is what they're alleging, folks, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to do some education, because some of this stuff makes sense for some of you, some of it doesn't make sense, and I think it's really important. Yeah, Robert, the video kind of had an echoing, but as long as I'm not echoing to you, then that's really all that matters. But right here, you can see it says, after Busch and his wife Samantha consulted an independent firm. So what they did is they got this policy set up, right? The policy was set up for 5 premium deposits from what the records say, totaling $10.4 million that they put into it. Now, they were supposed to only fund this IUL for 5 years. We're going to cover more of that later, right? That's what the illustration showed. And what they found is when they looked at the policy and they saw some things that didn't make sense. Now, this is after their policy went in force. So what they did here is they hired an independent firm, probably another advisory firm or someone like us, to review their current policy. And what they learned is that the policy that they put money into for 5 years was going to expire in 16 months. And that the $10.4 million they invested would be lost, or at least the 8 point some million of the 10. Because I'm sure they had some cash value. The Busch's lawsuit alleges that Pacific Life failed to reveal the true risks of the policy and made false and negligent representations regarding what was supposed to be a tax-free retirement income. According to Busch, he was told that by paying $1 million annually for 5 years, he would be able to withdraw $800,000 per year at age 52. I mean, listen, you don't even need to be good at math to know that that just doesn't seem to pencil. But nonetheless, $1 million every year in premiums for 5 years. And then the illustration showed that at age 52, they could withdraw $800,000 per year, and that would be tax-free income. Instead, what they learned is that the funds were going to the insurance company's account rather than being invested in the market, resulting in no growth as the market rose. Go to the next slide real quick. So these are just some 101s, okay? I just want to help you understand something. First off, IULs, you're not investing directly into the market. You are not putting your money directly into an index, okay? Your money is not going into the S&P 500. You are just participating with the insurance company. And the key points to understand here, and I just want to get these out of the way before I teach you, because these are high-level things that you need to understand, is market-based crediting is different than investing, okay? It is not investing. So what IULs are doing is you are participating in a market-based crediting. I'll give you some real world ways to kind of look at what does that actually mean in plain English. It's actually right at the bottom. It's like betting on a racehorse where the company sets your odds and caps your winnings. That's effectively what it's saying. But the other things you need to understand is cap rates. This is a really important thing when it comes to IULs. Cap rates equal the max earnings you can earn. So for example, think of a cap, right? If the S&P does 12%, but you have a cap rate of 6, well, the most you can make is 6%. Now, the important thing is not so much the cap rates, because a lot of IUL people would tell you that, oh, mine is uncapped, which means the sky's the limit. But here's the thing I want you to understand is cap rates inside these contracts can be changed at any time by the insurance carrier, okay? Participation rate is another terminology you need to get used to. And a participation rate I've mentioned before is how you're going to participate in the index, right? You're participating in money that the insurance company invests in some index, and that participation rate could be 100%, it could be 90, it could be 80%. But in this example, let's just say you had an IUL policy that had a cap rate of 6%. Okay, so that's 6% you can earn up to, that's the max, and a participation rate of 80%, which means you would participate in 80% of that 6%. So you can have both. Now, this is not common. I just want to be clear, it's not common, but you can. The insurance company in the complicated contract certainly can set your cap rate at 6, 8, 10, whatever they want, okay, whatever your contract says. And they can also set your participation rate at 80, 90, or maybe it's 100%. But I want you to just understand that these things are not guaranteed. They can be changed. That is the only thing I need you to understand. And there are fees and costs. So the cost of insurance, commonly known as COI, the admin costs, the surrender charges, which we're really going to get into. All these things are vitally important to understand because the illustrations that you're going to see and the illustrations I'm going to show you, and the illustrations maybe many of you have seen, they are not contracts. They are part of a contract, but they by themselves are nothing more than an assumption, not a guarantee, okay? They're assumptions. The costs, the cap rates, they can change. And that's what likely burned Kyle Busch in his policy. So Craig, you can stop sharing that. And now I'm just going to kind of go in and I just want to start going in and explaining some of these things so that we can kind of take this complicated cap rate and participation rate and the changes. And some people are already like, holy crap, like I'm already lost. Well, let's make it simple. Imagine you sit down with somebody and they're trying to sell you an IUL, and you're going to hear some key words used in selling this. Flexible premiums. Like Kyle Busch, his premiums were flexible because, hey, he said, hey, I want to fund this thing for 5 years. To which they did an illustration where he only funded it for 5 years. Now, let me ask all of you, if that was you and you funded your policy for 5 years, because that's what your illustration said, would you assume that you would have to continue to make premiums or pay for costs beyond that 5th year? Now, whether you say yes or no is irrelevant, but most people, if the illustration said 5 years, they're like, hey, I got to fund this thing for 5 years, then I'm done, right? That's all I need you to understand. So one of the key features of universal life or index universal life is flexible premiums. You can change and modify the amount of your premium. You know, a lot of times they'll say, hey, listen, if you lose a job or you have some hard times, you can adjust the premiums on your IUL. They are flexible, which is absolutely the truth. Death benefits, okay? There's lots of different options on how you set the death benefit to grow or stay level. And interest is, again, like I said, tied to an indexed performance. So the index, the S&P 500 is the most common. It's tied to that performance, but it's not, your money is not going in the market, okay? The insurance company is just taking your money in. They're basically going out there investing it, and they're setting the rules for how much you can make and how much they're going to allow you to participate in. Clear? When somebody buys an index universal life policy, the company is telling them you'll earn interest. Okay, keyword, you'll earn interest based on how the stock market performs, like the S&P 500. But your money isn't actually in the stock market. Me and Craig were talking to one of our clients who was shown an index universal life, and their advisor was telling them how much this is so much better than whole life, and you know, trying to get him to change his policy over to this index universal life. And I swear, this is when we were talking to him, I was somewhere in the conversation, I was saying, okay, well, what happens when the market goes down? Because we had already talked to the client. We said, hey, Mr. Client, it could be Mr. or Mrs. Client, in the next couple of years, do you think the market's going to go higher than it is today or lower? To which, let me ask all of you, every one of you, all 147 of you, if I ask you this single question, tell me up or higher or lower, if in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, do you think the market is going to be higher? The S&P 500 is going to be higher than it is today, or do you think it's going to be lower? And Tim, I don't know how it can be both. So let's just do next year. Do you think the S&P 500 is going to be higher than it is or lower? But here's the thing. If you're investing, let's say we're banking, because the majority of folks said that the markets are going to go lower. And those of you that think it's going to go higher, please, 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 please watch some of my YouTube content. I promise you will be happy, and I probably will save you a ton of money in the future if you understand what I understand, which I do lots of videos explaining why where we're at is a very pivotal point in time in the markets, a pivotal point in time in cycles, economic and market cycles, and why the markets more than likely will absolutely be lower next year than they are this year. But again, I can't time the market, so I have no idea. Would be a nice guy answer to that one because I can't time it. But if you're putting money in an index universal life and the market is going down, is that a good thing? This is kind of a trick question. What I'm trying to say is those of you that understand markets, you would be like, well, if the markets are going down, well, if I was putting money in the markets, then I would be dollar cost averaging lower, so I'd be buying shares cheaper. This financial advisor that Craig and I were on the phone with literally said that. Well, if the markets go down, that's going to be good for the client, Mr. or Mrs. Client, because then he's going to be buying into this index at a cheaper price. And I literally just wanted to go, oh my God, did we just get that recorded? Because if we just got that recorded, this person probably will be literally removed from his position as a financial advisor. Because remember, I said you are not investing in the market, you are participating in the market. So if your advisor ever tells you you're dollar cost averaging into a lower market, and that is a good thing inside of an index universal life, they are lying to you. I just wanted to bring that up because, again, it is so important you understand these little nuancy things. If you're in an IUL, it doesn't matter if the markets are going higher or lower, you are not buying into the market. So you have no dollar cost averaging, no benefit of the market going lower because you're buying a lower price of that S&P 500. The other thing I want to talk about is, is basically there's no direct upside in an IUL. There is just a crediting strategy, a cap rate and a participation rate. And effectively think of that as like a ceiling and a floor. Your cap's your ceiling, okay, which they can change. They can move that ceiling anytime they want. And then you've got a floor, okay, which a lot of times is 0%. So you know, like that'd be great. Hey, I can earn up to 8%, but I can't lose anything. And if you met with an advisor and that advisor told you you can, you cannot lose money in this IUL, what would you think? You would think that you can never lose money, right? But that isn't the case. You see, when you build one of these illustrations or when an IUL is shown to you, the advisor has the ability to put in what that hypothetical participation rate is. There's two columns usually. There's a guaranteed rate. There's usually three: guaranteed, midpoint, and current, okay? Current hypothetical assumption. So let's say they put a 7% assumption in there. Just so you know, all the numbers you're looking at in the IUL, every one of those numbers are going to basically show you how your money would grow under that hypothetical assumption. Now, for any of you market-based folks on here, how many of you have ever seen a mutual fund, an index, the stock, anything, earn the same exact return year after year after year? Has anyone ever seen that? No. The markets go up, the markets go down, they're different, they go up, they go down. So what they do is they say, okay, yeah, but this S&P 500 index or whatever the index is that your IUL has averaged this return, which very well might be 7%. So that they show, a hypothetical participation rate of 7%. And they say, yeah, but the markets have averaged. But that doesn't mean that's how yours is going to perform. So one of the things I have to believe happened with Kyle Busch, they got in with whatever this participation rate is, and based on market performance, maybe a couple of those years, maybe it was during COVID, they earned the floor, 0%. And the next year, maybe they earned 3%. And the next year, maybe it was 6%. And maybe they exceeded their cap or whatever it was, and they got their max amount they were. So what you have to understand is it's not a static return, but the illustration shows it as a static return. That is a big difference. It is a very big difference. It doesn't matter what the average return is. It matters what your actual return is or your actual participation in that return is year over year. Because if you're setting a policy up and that policy is set up to fund for 5 years. Then after that, some point in time in the future is supposed to pay you a guaranteed income stream, which, Craig, I know you know this, but I want everybody else to know this. That is the case with every one of these that we've seen. They're usually set up for some future hypothetical income, tax-free income. That's how they're sold. I will stand here, and someone maybe down the line will be able to come back and say, see, you were wrong. I will stand here and tell you that almost every single IUL sold will not hit the illustrated numbers, okay? You will not have the same numbers you have on your illustration. They will probably be less. Your income that you think you're going to take out of it probably will be less, okay? In Kyle's case, you know, like your policy is going to lapse. I'm not saying that's going to happen for anyone, but I'm just saying this is something you need to open your eyes to, and you need to really pay attention to this because it very well could happen. Now, I want to go into something because I know this is a lot of my opinion that I've given you outside of what we've read, and I see there's a lot of comments coming in. So, Stephen, at any time in these comments, if you want to stop me so we can address some of these from Alvaro or Emily or anything else. But before we do that, I do want to put out something. This is old, okay? But 2014, FINRA, okay? FINRA, which is one of the governing bodies, put out this regulatory examination, and this regulatory examination was basically looking at micro and macroeconomic factors and suitability, because that's really what FINRA is all about, is suitability. Okay, and I think that's one of the big things with Kyle Busch that was missed is the suitability. So right here it says FINRA remains concerned about the suitability of recommendations to retail investors for complex products. They're talking about IULs, whose risk-return profiles, including their sensitivity to interest rate changes, underlying product or index volatility, fee structures, and complexities may be challenging to investors to understand. Any of you ever tried reading one of these contracts? I have one right here. If any of you would like me to put you to sleep right now, we can read through this. You will understand probably about 1% of this. And out here, I'll just go right into one of the things here. First off, right in here, this is one of the IUL companies, and this is old as well, but this is Minnesota. It says administration and insurance charges will be deducted from your policy's accumulation value each month. In addition, transaction charges may apply if you request changes to be made for to your policy, which means if you reduce your premium, change your premium, or anything. Your policy will remain active as long as the accumulation value, your cash value, less any policy loans, got to factor the loans in, that's key, and accrued interest remains greater than 0. For Kyle, after that, whatever it was, 18 months or whatever that third party looked at and said the policy 16, 18 months, that was where their cost exceeded their accumulation value. I just want to be clear about that. So again, I'm sure all of you understand all this stuff, but this one says below is a hypothetical example demonstrating various interest crediting rates in a given year. This is intended to show that the interest crediting rates can vary widely from year to year, and as a result, the amount added to the accumulation value can vary widely from year to year. Right in the contract, this is in the contract, folks. It's telling you that your return or your participation rate, your interest crediting rate, will change year over year, but your illustration does not show it that way. These examples below assume a growth cap of 14%, so there's your cap rate, 14%, and a floor of 0, and are in no way indicative of actual or expected results. Now, forget about actual results, but are in no way, this is the insurance company's contract, are in no way indicative of expected results. So in other words, in the contract, they're fucking telling you that it's not going to perform the way it's illustrated, like right here. I know this is boring for some of you, but boring is good. You need to understand the boring stuff so you don't make the big mistake that Kyle Busch did. And I know a lot of you probably, based on the comments coming in, probably have IULs. And you don't want to believe some of this. And I get it. I get it. I wouldn't want to believe any of this stuff either. But have you read your contract? Because not only did we read the contract, we highlighted it, which you can't do when you give it to the client because that's illegal. But I could keep going on and on. The historical performance of an index or indexed account should not be considered a representation of past or future performance for the indexed account available in the policy. The actual interest credited by an indexed account may be less than or greater than the non-guaranteed assumed interest credits used in this illustration. Say what did that say? All of you understood that, right? I'm sure you did. You guys are way smarter than I am. Because to me, like, it was kind of like a double negative. I didn't even understand what it was saying. But hold on, I'm just going to keep going, because FINRA goes on to say, in some cases, the challenge of understanding products may be exacerbated by disclosure practices that are ineffective given the proliferation of complex product recommendations to retail investors, yada, yada, yada. Effectively, this whole article, this is 2014, there's been many of these. This whole article is talking about index universal lives. They call them complex structured products. They're going in and expanding how they're looking at these policies, how they're going to restrict these policies. They're going in and just looking at the different practices used. Anyway, I can't bore you on this, but this is all stuff that I shouldn't have to tell you, because this is FINRA. This organization, FINRA, is out there to protect you from misrepresentations, from these kind of sales tactics. This one here, retirement planning. This is dated May 2011. Let's see. This one goes on. They need to understand how psychology interacts with economic theory, blah, blah, blah. Records is the most concerned that the advisors may rely on products or financial products that are either being billed by the firms producing them as capable of dealing with particular investor biases of fears and are a reflection, albeit unwitting, of what an advisor believes is the right fix for the particular fear or bias. Sorry, I probably should have read that one, because that one doesn't make sense, but there's so much. There's another one right here. This one is another article. It's about building decision-making processes to get people to make their own decisions. As a financial advisor, my goal is to figure out where a client wants to go and what is driving their behavior. Specific products are not the answer. So I'm just giving you bits and pieces of this stuff, because I want you to understand that, like, we have been looking at this for years. And I know I've probably been called an idiot. I've had more haters than I can count. I had to make a t-shirt, for crying out loud, to fend off the haters. It said, haters need hugs too. But I'm trying to demonstrate this is stuff that's been sitting in a pile, that we've been talking about this. No less than 7 videos that we have created on this. But anyway, back into it. Okay, so again, I was talking about the participation rate, the cap rate. We already kind of went into that. And cap rate equals max earnings allowed. Okay, that's all you need to know. Cap rate is max earnings allowed. If your cap is 8 or 12 or 14, that's the most you can earn, but they can change it year over year. So you might set up the policy with a cap of 14, they can change it to 10, then they can change it to 8. All these different factors are things you probably are not aware of in the contract, because you just haven't read the contract. And even if you did read the contract, did you understand the contract? Those are the key elements here. Some IULs use both participation rate and cap rate. I already mentioned that. So it's kind of a double limited, kind of exposure there. Let's see. This one's important, and this is actually key. When you're shown an IUL, an illustration, okay, when you're shown one, it usually has charts and numbers. These are called illustrations. Let me just show you kind of what it would look like. Here's an illustration. I had this illustration actually done for myself when I was 46 years old from a gentleman who I said to them, I said, can you design me an IUL, but design it with the maximum cash value in the early years so that it mimicked the high early cash value policies we design using specially designed whole life. So I asked him to do this. I'm not going to give his name or anything. He did it. He put a hypothetical interest rate. And I want to preface here, and I got to cover his name. I want to preface this. I don't know if you can see that, but it says hypothetical interest rate, 6.25%. Then it goes over here, and I did this at 46, $12,000 a year. There's two columns, okay, on these illustrations, and I want to help you understand there's an accumulated value, and then there's a cash surrender value. Now you'll notice on this page there is no guaranteed column. You have to go deeper into the illustration, but this is page number 2 of 13 of the illustration. You'll notice it shows you exactly what you want to see. I want to see the hypothetical interest rate that the advisor or agent told me is going to, kind of be what is averaged. And I went through this. If I put 12 grand into this, and I want to preface, this is somebody I know. They know how to design IULs. This is a specially designed and engineered IUL policy. And I said, do it so that it has the maximum cash value in the first year. That's what my request was to this person. I put 12 grand in. Now I have an accumulation value of $9,959. And also I want to preface, I have a death benefit of $187,975. So if I put 12 in and I got 9,959, is that good? It's not terrible. It's in line with some of the specially designed whole lives, but hold on. That isn't the amount that I can use. This is where you really need to understand this. So many of these things are sold on the accumulation value. When you're using an IUL for IBC, which you never should, but if IBC results are solely a factor of how much cash you can actually use, not how much is in the policy that you can't use, how much you can actually use. So let me go to that column. That column in this specially designed IUL is 8,107, which is 67.55% of the premium I put in. Now, I have to believe that this illustration is significantly better than most IUL illustrations shown to clients out there, because this was designed by somebody I know, and I told them exactly what to do and what I did, and they knew what we did. But it takes 5 years to hit the efficiency point. So in the 5th year, I put 12,000 in. Okay, I've got 60,000 in the policy in the 5th year. My total cash surrender value that I can use is 54,000. So I put 60 in, I have 54. And my 12,000 that year is worth 12,421. But hold on. That's if and only if every year for 5 years, I earned a hypothetical interest rate of 6.25% or more. That is the only way this actually works. Now, over the 5 years from when I was 46 to 50 here in this example, which I'm 48 now, maybe that would have worked. But I got 2 years left, and all of you said that you probably think that next year the markets are going to be lower, not higher. Some said higher, which I commend all of you. I love the optimist out there, but unfortunately, at a certain point, we need to realize this is not realistic to be optimistic into 2026. But that's okay. So I'm just trying to explain this illustration here. Now let's just keep going back into this. Remember I said it's usually the charts and the numbers showing how your money will grow over time. That's the illustration. But it's hypothetical. And I read you in the contract that it's not even likely that these returns are going to happen, says the insurance company in the contract. The illustration might show you cash value growing nicely over 20 to 30 years. Most of them do. Most of these policies are designed not for today, not for tomorrow, but for 10, 15, 20 years when you want to retire and you want to take a tax-free income from this policy and protect your family all the while, right? That's kind of the way these policies work, right? Is long-term, not short-term. So I think right now at this stage, we're at, about 48 minutes in. Is it not understood by now that IULs are not a good fit for IBC? I think can we all agree on that? If we can all agree, put I in the chat. And if you don't agree, put no. That's fine. But I think at this point, with everything I've told you, this product, an IUL, would not be suitable from an advisor's fiduciary standpoint to recommend for the infinite banking concept, where you need high early cash value, guarantees, predictability. Okay, so good. We're all in agreement. So that's the biggest thing we ever teach. Never should you use an IUL for infinite banking concepts. But you don't believe me, Craig, Stephen, that's fine. The Nelson Nash Institute, which will send this out to every one of you, okay, in the next day or two, the Infinite Banking Practitioners Organization says you should not use IUL. So, but now let's get into the high arching thing is, okay, it's not good for IBC, but Chris, what if I want to use it for retirement? Okay, you want to do the same thing that Kyle Busch did. Great, let's assume that that's what we want to do. If the illustration shows your money growing nicely over 20 to 30 years, but the growth is based on best case assumptions, which in most cases, the illustration, not always, but I've seen one. I want to preface this. I just spoke to the client the other day. He sent me an IUL that was created by his advisor who he trusts explicitly. And he says, hey, listen, I just need a second set of eyes. Craig, you remember this one I sent to you. Remember, she did a really good job. She put the hypothetical rate, I think it was around 4%, which is very realistic. Okay, now there I could buy into that. It was a very well-designed IUL. And you know what? A well-designed IUL is like a well-designed whole life. The advisor makes significantly less in commission. That's how it works. Somebody's got to give so somebody else gets. But I want to preface that is one illustration out of, I don't know, as a team, we've seen hundreds. One was designed properly, because most of them are designed to wow you. They are designed like Kyle Busch's was, to show you something that, wow, this seems too good to be true, but hey, if they say it's that, then it must be that. They say it's a rabbit, so it must be a rabbit, right? If the market is doing well every year, the company's costs are staying low. Those are the two assumptions. You have to make a couple assumptions to get to this analysis of you're going to be able to do what the illustration says. Number one, the markets are going to have to continue to perform at or above your hypothetical participation rate. So write that down. At or above your hypothetical participation rate every year. So if you're doing this policy to start an income in 20 years, you got to hit that every year for 20 years. Are we clear? We're clear about that, right? Okay. Second, the insurance company cannot change the rules of engagement. They can't go in and change your participation rate. They can't go in and change your cap rate. And most importantly, they can't go in and change your cost of insurance or your policy fees. To which in the contract, they can do all of those, unlike a whole life. But they can change all of those in an IUL. Remember, the whole thing with an IUL is it shifts the risk from the insurance company and puts it onto you. Let me repeat that because that's important. An IUL and all universal life policies, for the most part, shift risk off of the insurance company and put the risk on the client. Where with a whole life policy, and I'm not making this about whole life here. I'm not trying to convince all of you that you should buy whole life. That is not my intention. I'm just trying to do this. In a whole life, the insurance company bears almost all the risk. The only risk the insurance company doesn't bear is you making your premium deposits. Because if you don't make your premium deposits in a whole life, your policy eventually will lapse. No different than if you have an IUL policy and you don't make your premium deposits, yes, your policy very well will lapse like Kyle's was going to. Okay? I just want to be clear about that. Okay? So we're talking apples to apples. But all these things that have to happen are not guaranteed to happen. It's a key word. Your policy expenses are not guaranteed to stay the same in an IUL. Your cost of insurance is not guaranteed to stay what they show you on the illustration. Okay, it can go up. They are not guaranteed. Your interest credited, your cap rate, your participation rate are not guaranteed to stay the same. So I think you're all understanding this. So even though the illustration looks great, the illustration is not the contract, it is not a promise, and it is not a guarantee. It is just a guess of what might happen. So unless all of you on here or anybody that's buying IULs are just okay guessing on what their financial future is going to look like, on what their financial income is going to look like, then I think we need to go back and relook at this whole thing, much like Kyle Busch is doing right now and trying to spread the word, trying to get people to say, hey, hold on a second. Maybe you should read the contract. Maybe you should have a third party read it. Maybe you should get your attorney to read it and explain it to you. Maybe we all need to pause and start taking some responsibility for what we're doing so that we don't get caught upside down like they did. The big idea here is if you buy based on an illustration alone, without understanding what's guaranteed, you are going to be in for a surprise. Okay, and Shauna, myself, Craig, Stephen, that is absolutely what we are saying we think happened to Kyle Busch. We've read all the articles, and there's a lot of missing pieces in those articles, but it's very clear what happened. They set out to set up a policy where for 5 years they were going to put money in. Okay, now I don't know how they got to the million, but let's just do this real quick. Okay, so how they did this, let's just say they're going to put $1 million in for 5 years. And then sometime down in the future, I don't know, Kyle looks pretty young, so 52, let's just say that's 14 years later, what they're going to do, so remember, years 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all those, the premium is zero, not $1 million. They showed the illustration going to zero, but then at some point, I'm just making this up, folks. Please don't hold me to this. I just got to pick somewhere. They're going to start taking $800,000 out as a tax-free, and there's a little bit more to understand about this on how you take tax-free income. It's basically taking surrenders up to basis. Now, this is interesting too. This is one thing that they don't tell you. And I think it's really important. I'm going to try to articulate this the best way I can in a very simple fashion. A life insurance policy like these, like the IULs that we're talking about, or even the whole lives, okay? There are 2 different ways you can take money out. Technically 3 different ways you can take your cash value out. Number 1, you could take a loan. You hear us talk about this all the time. So if this was the case and Kyle Busch and Samantha Busch wanted to start taking an income, this $800,000 they're taking out, they could take it as a loan. But as you all probably know, because we've been teaching the infinite banking concept the right way for a very long time, when you take a loan, the insurance company does charge you a loan interest rate, a simple interest rate. Now, That's great. It doesn't really affect the policy. If you take a loan from the policy, you use it to pay off your debt, use it to buy a car, use it to do a private lending deal, use it to buy real estate that provides an income to go back into the policy as a loan repayment. All of that is the infinite banking concept. You take loans out of the policy, out of your bank, your money continues to work. You do whatever it is you're going to do with that money. It makes a return or allows you to recapture a return. Then you take that money and you put it back into the policy as a loan repayment. We call it recycle recapture. That circle, think of that, right? That's how infinite banking works. That's how we teach it. It's how we've always taught it. But now, IULs, you're going to put money in for 5 years. You're going to hope and pray, because that's all I'm going to call it. I'm not going to call it a hypothetical rate. I'm just going to say you're going to hope and pray that it gets its 6.25, or I'm just going to round 7%, okay? Hope and pray that it's going to hit its hypothetical 7%. And if it does, then at a certain point, we're going to be taking $800,000 out. Now, if we take a loan, the insurance company, even the IUL policies, are going to charge you some type of interest, okay? That's the cost of capital. But when you take an income out for retirement, please tell me, do you plan on paying that money back? Is that $800,000 they were going to take out, is that going to be invested to make a return again? No, that's just to live on. Like the racing career is over. Like you're just kind of kicking back now. You just want to enjoy life. You can't take money from your qualified retirement plans because those don't start till 59 and a half. So this is just income. So then I would say that taking a loan would not be a very good way to do it, because now all of a sudden you've just created a draw against your cash, which is already delicate because of all the things we said, the hope and pray. So the other way you would do it is you would take a surrender of cash value. Okay, this is the second way you can take money out of these policies. And you can do that from a whole life too. But when you take a surrender, let's just say you put in 5 million, or actually, what was the number? They put in 10 million. I don't know how they're coming to that, but they put in $10 million. Okay, let's just say they put in 10 million and they're going to take 800,000 out. Let's just say it's for 10 years. So 800,000 out for 10 years is, what is that? Am I doing my math right? Is that $8 million, Craig?
8 million. Yep.
8 million. But I'm assuming they're probably were shown taking that money out for more than just 10 years. They were probably shown 20 or 30 years as an income. You're going to exceed that. But here's the deal. You can take surrenders out tax-free, and this is what I'm getting at. If they put $10 million in, okay, that was the total amount they put in, they can take $10 million out as surrenders tax-free. But once they breach 10 million, so that would be in like year 9, 10, or sorry, year 11 or 12, they're going to exceed that. Now they've got to switch from surrenders, because you can only take surrenders to basis. And as soon as you exceed basis, you got to pay tax. So we don't want to pay tax. So now we're back to taking loans. And when we start taking loans, now we've got an additional cost. And that additional cost is the interest charged on the loans from the insurance company, which definitely would make Kyle's situation and anybody's situation even worse. So is this an ideal retirement planning strategy? Not really, not in the way that they're being sold as a sole tax-free retirement strategy, because it has lots of holes that we're not even getting into, and Kyle Busch didn't even get into. And the third way you could do it is if you had a whole life, you could take dividends in cash. But I'm sorry, IULs don't have dividends because IULs are not participating. IULs are hypothetical in nature, and unless the market participation rate gives you that, so that's it. So when we start really looking at the big picture, the illustration means nothing. And I want to come back over here. And actually, Craig, could you still share the screen? But right here, these are the whole life assumptions, the IUL versus whole life. So key areas, let's just cover a couple key areas. Number one, performance. We already went over that with IULs. It's an indexed-based projection, okay? An indexed participation in that, whatever the insurance company makes based on a cap and a participation. In a whole life, it's just boring contractual guarantees. I know, it sucks. There's no ups and downs. There's no hope of making more. Maybe the dividend goes up a little, which actually it has. Matter of fact, we've had 2 companies this year, 2 of our giant mutually owned dividend-paying whole life insurance companies came out, and this year their dividends went up. Mass Mutual went from 6.4 to 6.6% dividend crediting rate. Wow, 2 basis point increase. Woohoo! And then Lafayette went from, correct me if I'm wrong, Craig, but I think it was 5.7 to 5.9, 15 basis point increase or whatever it was. Nothing to write home about. It's not like, oh my God, honey, the market's crushed it this year. We went from making 4 last year to making 8 we hit our cap this year. Nope. In whole life, you've got a boring contractual guarantee right in your contract. This is what you're guaranteed to earn in interest. No ifs, no ands, no buts. And you know the best part about the whole life? It can't ever be changed. There is nothing in the whole life contract that allows the insurance company to change your contractual guaranteed interest rate. The only thing the insurance company can change in a whole life policy is the dividend. And well, since I've been doing this, we've seen dividends going up. Now that won't always be the case, but that's just what we've seen. And that's because of the high interest rate environment. So whole life, the simple way to say it, it's boring, but it's predictable. Charges. Let's talk about this. This is really important. The charges that you pay on an IUL. And let's talk about some of those charges. Okay. There's policy service fees. Okay. Which whole life has that as well. $150, per year, something like that. And I think those are I think they can change, but I've never seen any of the whole life companies change their policy service fee. And that's probably the case with IULs. They're probably like $50 to $100. But in an IUL, there's another charge that is completely misrepresented and not often enough explained. And I think the easiest way for me to do this is just draw it. And I'm going to do it just like this. I want to make this super simple. We're going to go whole life and IUL. And all we're talking about here is the cost of insurance, which equals how much does it cost for that stupid death benefit that I have on this policy, okay? That's what we're talking about. Here's how a whole life works. How many of you like straight lines when it comes to costs? It never changes. It is 100% guaranteed to never change. So what your cost of insurance is the day you start your policy will be the cost of insurance the day your policy ends or the day you die, okay? And they end at 121, and at that point, they just pay you out the death benefit. So you're 121, you're sitting there at your 121st birthday party, you're blowing out all the candles on the cake, and you got a big check coming from the insurance company. But while you're blowing the cake out, you choke and you die because you're 121, and well, then the policy pays out anyway. So got it? Never changes. Now here's how an IUL works. They are awesome in the early years. When you're young, the cost of insurance is super, super low. So let's just say a 40-year-old takes out an IUL. When they're 40, the cost of insurance is way down here. Look at how much more expensive. And this is how they do it. They say, oh my God, whole life is so expensive. And you know what? If we looked at 1 year, we'd be like, yeah, well, that whole life is way more expensive than an IUL from a cost of insurance. But then all of a sudden, and I'm just going to do it in 5-year increments here. You turn, 40, 41, 42. Here's what happens. 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. That's still cheaper than that whole life. I'm winning, but the cost is going up. You're not really seeing this, but internally, if you look at your statements, you'll see every year the cost goes up. And then it keeps doing this, keeps going up and 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 up. Sorry, my lines are getting messed up, but here we go. Now, when is the death benefit most important? Is it most important when you're 40? Or do you think it's more important when someone's 80, 90, maybe approaching 100 years old? Now, isn't this when people start really being like, oh my gosh, I got this life insurance policy that's going to help you guys. You guys can use it to pay for my funeral. You guys can use it to pay whatever you want. I set this up when I was a long time ago. It's pretty important when you get in these older ages, isn't it? So do you think that a whole life policy that started off more expensive but was always the same is going to make it the long haul? Yeah. See, over here in an IUL, what happens, and this is Kyle Busch's thing, this is why over time Kyle Busch ran, like the policy was going to lapse, is because the cost internally went up. Now, this is assuming that they never change the cost of insurance. A whole life, they can't in the contract. In an IUL, they can. So this can change. Even though it goes up every single year, which is change, they can change it and make it more expensive based on the performance of the insurance company and their internal costs. So how about that? Oh, well, hey guys, we fucked up and we had to pay out more death benefits because of COVID. So we're going to increase that cost of insurance just a wee little bit. No big deal, just a wee little bit. Yep. See, over time, that makes a huge difference. And here's how they're designed. Remember I said an IUL is designed to shift the risk off the insurance company and put the risk on you. What risk do you take with an IUL? Well, you take the participation risk. The insurance company does not have to guarantee you anything other than zero. And the insurance company knows that even if the market goes negative, it's only going to be negative for a few years, okay? So that's the insurance company's risk. Your risk is it doesn't perform exactly how it is. The cost of insurance exceeds your performance, because then here, what you've also got is, just like a whole life, you've got your cash value growth. And then we'll just assume that the IUL goes up higher. So you've got your growth, but then what if it doesn't grow like that? What if it grows like this? And all of a sudden your cost exceeds your performance. You go backwards, folks. Sorry, my drawing's not all that great, but you understand what I'm trying to say. These are the changes, the costs inside your IUL policy. All right, Craig, are you still sharing that?
I'll go back. I just wanted to make sure the screen was on your board, so let me share back.
Appreciate that. I'm all over the place. This next one is pretty important. Again, I told you in a whole life policy, it's level, it's known in advance, it doesn't change. Liquidity is a huge thing. I explained this when I showed that pack life policy that I had done for myself. The liquidity is delayed. It might show that you have the cash value, but you can't use it. Do you know why that is? Do you know why IULs have surrender charges? Well, because if the insurance company is trying to shift the risk over to you, don't you think they'd want to also make sure that they got all their money back? Yeah. The insurance company guarantees themselves getting all their money. They don't guarantee, but they make sure themselves get all their money back by saying, hey, listen, we know you've got $9,959 in accumulation value, but you can only use $8,107. What it actually should say in small print is, hey, listen, your advisor got a commission on this policy. And because your advisor got a commission, we need to recoup that commission based on your fees, your cost of insurance. So until you pay us all that commission back, we're not going to give you access to all of your cash value. Comprende? Cool? We got a deal? That's what it should say. But it doesn't. And they very rarely, from what I see, talk about the cash surrender value. It's always the accumulation value. When we are up against IUL agents or advisors, they're always like, oh, well, in 15 years, and they're always talking 20 years in the future, right, Craig? It's always like, well, in 20 years, it's got this much. I'm like, dude, how much does it have in year 2? Oh, no, well, 20 years. And yeah, no. Let me rephrase the question. Year 2. They don't want to answer that because they know that there's a surrender charge. Oh, well, in year 2, it's got $20,453. Okay, second question, Mr. Advisor. Out of that $20,453, Mr. Advisor, how much can I take in year 2? Oh, well, in 20 years, no, year 2, $18,793. And folks, this is a really good design that you probably wouldn't get because your advisor would not want to give up their commission on that. Keep going, okay? So that's delayed in an IUL. In a whole life, it's immediate. Now, we wrote down immediately in the first year, but you all know that when you do a deposit into your specially designed and engineered whole life that we create for you, when is it that you can access your cash value? And I mean all of your cash value, or at least 90% of your cash value? Who can tell me? Who can tell me? Would it be immediately in the first 30 days? And the last thing I want to talk about is focus, investment returns, okay? The IUL's focus and sales tactics are all based on markets. Now, IULs are not sold only by financial advisors that are security licensed. IULs, you do not have to have a security license, but yet one of the things the FINRA article deeply talked about is should financial professionals be able to, or should non-security licensed financial professionals be able to sell these when they're really selling a market-based product? In a whole life policy, the focus is solely on cash flow and the way we design them on banking, privatized banking. Now, I got to pause here, folks. Stephen's doing a great job, and he's not bothering me because I get on a little roll. But Craig, you can stop sharing this. We got to talk a little bit about what's his name, Alvario.
I think he left.
Oh, of course he did. It's funny when they yeah. Anyway, but Alvario said totally wrong. That's only if you set it as an increase of death benefit, or it's the same death benefit. As your cash value increases, you pay less for death benefit because the life insurance company is in less of a hook in the event of death. I'm sorry, can somebody type that into Chat GPT because I'm just not understanding what he said. Guaranteed, and you guys can all hang me up to dry, have your attorneys come after me. In an IUL policy, I promise you, the cost of insurance goes up every year when you get older. I don't know what he's talking about here, and if Alvario's back on, believe me, I'll put you on the panel right now, but you better be ready to bring it because I know what I'm talking about here. So if you want to debate me right here, right now, we could do this because what you're saying is not wrong. You are doing the same thing the fucking contract does, excuse my language, but oh, folks, for any of you that are listening, I live in New York, which means we have a license to swear. So sorry about the cursing, but we are allowed to here. Just want to make sure I put that disclaimer out. So let me just repeat that. totally wrong is what Alvario said to what I was saying. That's only if you set it as an increase of death benefit. So what he's talking about, when you set it as increase of death benefit, you can have your illustration and your gains increase your death benefit, or you can set the death benefit to be level. But he's saying it is if you, the same death benefit, or as your cash value increases, you pay less for death benefit because the life insurance company is in less of a hook in the event of death. So basically what he's saying is, if you think of it this way, try to show you this, as your cash value grows, okay, the death benefit that the insurance company is on the hook for, now the death benefit can either be straight line, okay, it can be level in an IUL. You have the ability to choose this. You can do a straight line, okay, death benefit, or you can have the death benefit increase. Okay, there's two different ways you can do this. So what he's basically saying is as this gap narrows between the cash value and the death benefit, the insurance company is on the hook for less risk, which to that he's kind of right, because right, if there's cash value and the policy owner has not taken the cash value, so that's another factor. Now, to what Alvario was saying, like the way that most people are using IULs is they plan to take and use the cash value, just like Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch was like, shit, man, I'm taking $800,000 a year tax free. That shit sounds good. But we're just going to pretend we're never going to take money out. And then this would be true, but that does not mean the insurance company charges you less. It means that the insurance company has less risk, but mark my words, and I'll tell Alvario if he's still on here, that isn't the case. Your death benefit cost of insurance continues to increase. It does not decrease. The risk for the insurance company decreases, not the cost, not the actual cost. Let's see. Then he goes on and says, death benefit because the life insurance company is less on the hook in the event of death. I'm done with you only saying what is convenient for you to keep selling your IBC concept. Again, nothing wrong with it. It's up to the person and how they want to invest money. And also too, folks, when you're doing a whole life insurance policy, I want to preface this, you are not investing your money because you can't invest when something is guaranteed. That is not what investments are. Investments involve risk. Anyway, is he still on here or did he peace out because he just couldn't handle?
I think he's gone.
He's gone.
But, I mean, at the end of the day, I look at these situations, and if he's got this IUL he's had for 11 years, he should take your 10 grand.
Well, Yvette said the cost goes down every year. After 10 years, there is no more fees. That would be the case in like a limited pay whole life. And maybe there's an IUL out there that I'm not aware of where it is a limited pay contract. I'm not aware of that, but hey, listen, it doesn't mean there isn't one. Then maybe after that, I'm not sure, but I'm not aware of one of those. So Yvette, if you got one of those, send me the illustration. But send me the illustration and a sample contract, please. I would be more than happy to look at that and go through it. So, because hey, listen, I can always learn, right? And maybe there are things that I don't know that I could learn about. But at the end of the day, Kyle Busch, the reason this whole thing started, and we didn't really need to go down some of the rabbit holes, but the whole point is he's in a predicament. He made premiums based on assumptions, based on a hypothetical illustration that didn't prove to actually work out. Therefore, he's got a lawsuit, and lots of other people are jumping into this lawsuit as well. These are not opinions, folks. You can Google it yourself. You can look it up yourself. You can read the same articles that we've been putting up because I'm just telling you what's already been posted out there in the public. And you know what? When the case goes to court and everything happens and the arbitration goes through, we're going to see who was right and who was wrong. But here's my guess. And this is just my opinion. I'm not making a recommendation or a suggestion or implying anything. My guess is that Pac Life, or that's who, not Pac Life, or is it Pac Life?
It is.
Pac Life, okay. Yeah, Pacific Life. My guess is Pacific Life is just going to pay them off, slap that agent on the hand and say, hey, go about it. Because you know what? For them to write a $10 million check to kind of put this thing to bed, they will absolutely do that to shut it up. Because the amount of business that they're going to lose from this and the amount of damage that will be done to the IUL industry because of this will be almost, I don't even know what the number is, massive. Alvario didn't like that. So George said, I think to decrease the cost of IUL insurance after several years, the amount of the death benefit you are insured for goes down. So essentially what you're saying, and now that's kind of stupid. How many of you want to buy a life insurance policy that the death benefit goes down as time goes on? So it kind of looks like this. Here's your death benefit. Your death benefit goes down. How many of you want one of those? I'm sure my wife would be pretty freaking pissed off at me. And George, I'm sure if you're married, your wife would probably say the same thing. George or Chris, however, whatever you want to do, Why would you ever buy a life insurance policy that the death benefit went down? Like, does that make any sense? And then, you know, George, I guess we could make the argument with our wives. It's like, hey, honey, I thought we wouldn't need as much life insurance. You know, like Dave Ramsey always says, hey, we'll self-insure. We'll have all this cash value and all this money and all these assets, and we're just going to self-insure. We won't need any death benefit. Why? You think your wife's going to be okay with that one? Because my wife certainly isn't. Now, hey, look, to each their own. I'm just messing with you, George, but, you know, I'm sure you're sitting there thinking, yeah, no, I don't think my wife would like that either. Anyway, all right, so the account value goes up. The death benefit will stay the same. Again, Diana, that's the thing. It can go different ways. You can pick and choose, like I was explaining, and now I guess there's another dynamic in there. You can pick with a policy, an IUL. You can have the death benefit remain level. That's a level death benefit option. Okay, you can also pick one where the death benefit increases over time, and that would basically be as your cash value goes up, it basically drives your death benefit up. That would be a lot like a whole life, but a whole life, you don't have to pick that. It just happens through paid up additions. And then I guess there's another one that I guess we'll have to do some research, Stephen and Craig, because I don't like getting things wrong. There seems to be another option where your death benefit can go down. That's one that I don't know why anyone in the insurance industry would ever sell a life insurance policy that has a death benefit that goes down. But hey, listen, to each their own. I'll never quite understand that. Let's see. Yeah, Nathan, I'm just trying to put it out there, but I'm also trying to be observant, and I'm trying to listen to what everybody on here is saying. Because listen, an old dog can always learn a new trick. Okay, and I'm an old dog, and I would love to learn a new trick, but I've been around this. I surround myself with lots of people that are way more knowledgeable in the IUL space, including attorneys that love to sue IUL agents for these things. Like we know lots of them, and we don't bring them on the show just because, like, why? It just seems kind of silly. Like no one needs more attorneys in their life, especially more than we have in our lives being here in New York. But it's just, you know, there's lots of evolution in product designs. Even whole life has evolved. I mean, it's basically still the same as it was 100 and some years ago, except for now we can design them differently from a contractual standpoint. But let's get back into this. I want to just kind of wrap this thing up because I know I am coming up on time. The lessons, you know, from the fine print and what Kyle missed, these are kind of what we put together. The fine print is the product, okay? If you can't explain how your money grows, someone else is profiting from your confusion. And that isn't anything out of the contract or anything, but if you can't explain how your money grows, someone else is profiting from your confusion. That's just a general fact that you should know. If you don't know how your money is growing, then somebody else does, and they are profiting off of your confusion and your lack of knowledge. That's why we always say invest in things you know, like, and understand. And when I say invest, that is not putting money in a whole life, because that is not investing. That is no different than you putting money in a bank account that is guaranteed, no different. Okay? The illustration is not the policy. This is probably the single most important thing. Most people, when they buy an IUL, they buy it because of an illustration, but this is not your contract. It is part of your contract, but all of them somewhere right here, right at the bottom. This is an actual illustration, folks, and just so happens this is a PAC Life. That wasn't by choice. I just pulled this out because this thing was done, let's see, 9/20 of 2023. And there's the date. I'm just trying to be transparent. So here's what it says at the bottom of this illustration. It says, this report is not complete and cannot be presented without the basic illustration. Refer to the basic illustration for guaranteed elements and other important information. Non-guaranteed elements are not guaranteed. Okay, so then when you go over here and you flip through the rest, if I'm trying to find the guaranteed component, it may not even be in here. This gives you all this stuff. 1 year high cap indexed amount, 1 year volatility control. You guys all know what this stuff is, right? Like, I don't need to tell you this. 1 year high par volatility control indexed account. Yeah, Craig, you know what that means, right? Yeah, of course you do. High par 5 year indexed account. Yeah, okay. And then it goes down and explains all that stuff. I didn't understand any of that. And some people would say, oh, see, you shouldn't be telling people about this if you don't understand all that stuff. Listen, I'm speaking, I don't own an IUL. So for any of you IUL folks out there, like the one gentleman who was on there, please try to sell me one, but explain that to me. Walk me through the entire contract and explain everything in like a 5th grade level. Please, someone do that for me. All right, so Kyle Busch's case shows the real financial consequences of not knowing what you're putting your money in and not knowing what the contract actually says. IULs are built on assumptions and moving targets. Whole life, if used properly, is boring, predictable, and powerful. Okay, I'm not trying to use this whole bad scenario to try to sell you whole life. Like, I'm going to tell you all this right now. Don't buy whole life, okay? Don't. And some of you are like, well, I want to. Okay, well, if it solves your problem, then sure, buy a whole life, but allow it to be specially designed and engineered by our team. I'm simply trying to point out the facts and the different things that are coming out of this case, not using this to say, oh, and by the way, you should buy whole life. I guess we kind of just do that by sheer nature. And the infinite banking concept equals control, liquidity, and clarity. Effectively, the infinite banking concept simply puts you back in control of your money by allowing you to take back the banking functions of your life. That is it. It's a banking concept, okay? The only reason we use the stupid whole life is it's just a bit more efficient than anything else you can run your money through. That's all. And compounding interest is a pretty powerful thing. So here's the thing I want to say. I'm sure some of you on here, and I don't expect any of you to admit it, I'm sure some of you on here have these products. You have an IUL. Here's what I want to offer. Our team, all of them are versed in IUL, and we have some people that are what I would call IUL experts. If you have an IUL and you want us to review it, set up a call. We'll put a link up in the chat right now. Set up a call. Send us over your IUL. And here's the thing. I don't believe, that I know we don't go around trying to replace IULs, because if it's in the surrender period, that's going to cost you money. So what we typically will tell clients is, listen, you're in a bad predicament. This happens all the time. That whole video we started playing with Devin Burr, that was his scenario. He had to make the decision to pay the surrender fee. I told him not to. I said, no, just ride that thing out until you get to your surrender period. Then once you get to the surrender period and it's over, then at least you can get all your money out. But a lot of people don't want to wait that out. Okay, they learn something too late. They're like, oh my God, this is bad. And they want to basically, do that. So if you want us to review your IUL, we need the full illustration. And if you have the contract, that would also be helpful. But the illustration is plenty for us to review it. And we will give you an honest review. We will not say this thing's a piece of crap. We will not say, blah, blah, blah. We will just show you the facts that maybe you missed, or the things that you need to be aware of, and the things that maybe you need to kind of take consideration of moving forward with it. And then if after that you decide you want to do something else, great, we can help you with that. But this is called a blueprint call. We set this up for this particular purpose because we knew there's going to be a lot of people that were going to kind of come onto this webinar because of what's going on with the Kyle Busch thing. It's all over the news, and it's going to continue to be all over the news. And mark my words, lots of people are going to jump onto that lawsuit, and it will probably end up becoming a class action lawsuit. I can't say that that's exactly what's going to happen, but there's going to be other people watching this saying, oh my God, I'm that person. I'm just like Kyle Busch. I got the same scenario. I want my money back too. I got this guy, and you can look him up on TikTok and Instagram. He's called IUL Exposer. His name's Jonathan. I had him on my podcast, and I believe I thought I had him on here, but I will. All he does is goes around and reviews IUL illustrations. Then he's got attorneys, like I told you, those IUL hunters, if you will. And he goes to the attorneys, connects the client and the attorney, and then they go after the insurance company. And he has gotten millions of dollars back for clients, millions, because of the same reason this is happening. So look him up, IUL Exposer, okay? We do not have an affiliate arrangement. Matter of fact, Jonathan, he doesn't like whole life either. And he'll say it in his videos. You'll see him going through analyzing whole life. But you know what the cool thing is? Jonathan, at least up to last time I spoke to him, has never, ever, ever replaced or gone in and basically went after any agent for, or definitely not any IBC policies, but any agent for whole life. And you can double check with him if he's done anything, but I know he's never looked at one of our policies and said, oh, you need to get rid of this, or hey, talk to my attorney about this stupid whole life. Never once. But with IULs, he does this every single day. But Jonathan is a buy term invest the difference guy. Don't think any less of him, but he's very passionate about that. That's what he does. So I want to just tell you that, I'm biased. I'm inherently biased because I'm a whole life guy. I believe in whole life. My money's in whole life. That's what we teach. That's what we've been teaching. We help thousands and thousands of people structure and properly design whole life insurance policies with mutually owned life insurance companies that pay dividends to be used with the infinite banking concept. So, listen, I'm biased. Jonathan's not. IUL Exposer. I'm just trying to be honest with you. Folks, listen, if you're in a situation with an IUL, you need help. And now this is the point where you can get help, because Kyle Busch opened the door for all of you to go out there and get help with this. I'm not saying all IULs are bad. Definitely not saying that. And I'm not saying all IUL agents are bad. But every good IUL agent will agree with me publicly saying the problem with the IULs is they are misrepresented, missold, and usually sold based on commissions, not actually solving the proper problem. So that's it, folks. We'll put that link up. It's right over there, mentors.beyourownbanker. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. I thought it was kind of cool that we had, I wish Alvario would have stayed on a little bit longer, or I wish I would have saw that a little bit earlier, because I would have really liked to have debated him. But maybe we'll get back to that. But he just didn't seem like he wanted to be debated. He just wanted to seem like he was right, I was wrong, and I was like doing something deceptive by telling everybody, you know, what happened to Kyle Busch and how IULs work and the problems that he is having with them. Oh, the fault is the agents, not the product. I completely agree with that, and I will second that. So again, Yvette said the fault is the agents. The Kyle Busch, I know they're suing Pac Life because Pac Life's got a big pocketbook. They're not suing that little agent that's being named in it. Now, granted, that agent is being named in it because they obviously are going to have some consequences here, and I'm sure going to be kind of wrapped and brought up into this thing. But again, the product isn't the problem. It was how the product was sold. Pac Life still wears the burden because they allowed their agent to do this. Now, this is the final thing I'm going to say in the last 2 minutes here. It kind of makes sense. Think about it this way. The insurance industry, not the entire industry, just so you all know, the companies that we deal with, Lafayette Life, One America, Mass Mutual, Guardian Life, Security Mutual, none of those 5 that we write with sell IUL. Now, to be fully transparent, Western Southern Group, which owns Lafayette Life, has another company called Columbus that sells IULs. But Lafayette Life, the company we write with, which is owned by a conglomerate, they are not an IUL shop. They do not have an IUL product, period. Matter of fact, it's funny seeing the Columbus guys and the Lafayette guys in the same room. It's kind of like you're just waiting for like a fight. It's like, all right, come on, what do I got to do to get this thing going here? Me and Craig witnessed that when we were out there in Cincinnati. But we don't deal with any companies that sell IULs. But I want to preface here that I lost my train of thought, of course. In the final minute, I had the perfect thing to say, and I went down the rabbit hole of Cincinnati. Because, oh, I don't even know what I was going to say. Damn. How many of you ever had that happen, right? It's like, you know, when you're on a stage in front of hundreds of people, and all of a sudden you're right in the middle of like something great you're going to say, and then all of a sudden it's gone. It happens, folks. You know what? The best thing you can do is just laugh about it because it doesn't make a difference. You know, you're showing your vulnerabilities. We all are human and not ChatGPT or AI, because AI would never make that mistake. It would nail it. But anyway, yeah, brain fart, you can call it what it is. But I was going somewhere good with that. I don't know where it was. But nonetheless, here.
You're talking about how the companies we work with don't use or sell IULs. I don't know if that
No, I
triggered
know, but I
your-
was going
okay.
somewhere with that. I just don't remember where I was going with it, but it doesn't matter. Just simply saying we just don't deal with any of the IUL companies, and we never will, just because we don't believe in the product. What we do, which is the infinite banking concept, the practitioners organization doesn't believe in IUL. And it's not just because of an opinion. They actually had economists, his name is Dr. Murphy, okay, go through and analyze IULs when they were, you know, early days, because IBC's been around since the late 90s. So when IULs came about, people, of course, brought them and said, hey, could this work? And he did a full analysis of it, and he said, no, you know, the economics of scale and all the different ways and the moving parts and the non-guarantees makes this product just not the most efficient or not a suitable recommendation for IBC. That's it at the end of the day. But also, too, folks, listen, like you heard me kind of go for an hour and a half, but also go to FINRA. Okay, pull up IULs, do a Google search for IULs. There's article after article after article of all the different things going on. Conclusions was that other one, all about retirement planning and IULs and the faults with them. This was a Minnesota Life policy contract that one of our clients sent over to us a long time ago. This was actually a really sad one. I'll just real quick tell you, this is a 46-year-old client of ours. They had this policy. They were putting $100,000 in, and it's kind of funny. I want to make sure. Yeah, I blacked out the person's name, but it kind of looks like Kyle Busch's, doesn't it? So first thing, I know you can't really see that, but $100,000 for 5 years. That was the illustration. Guaranteed values, non-guaranteed values. Non-guaranteed values were on an illustrated hypothetical rate of 6.48. So at 6.48, this thing ran like a banshee. And I think there was an income stream that came from this, or maybe not on this one. Yeah, no income stream for this. So they put 500,000 in and it runs. But now on the guaranteed side, okay, which is assuming a guaranteed interest rate of 3%, the policy starts losing money after the 20th year and slowly declines to zero and lapses at the age of 73. So this is, I mean, this is a real illustration. It's old, Okay. But it's real. And the thing I'm trying to explain is whether your policy we're going to lapse in 16 or 18 months when you have somebody look at it, or 20 years, it's the same thing. When you take out a life insurance policy, a permanent life insurance policy, you take that out for your whole life. You don't want to leave your kids and your family, left trying to find money to bury you and pay for the funeral and pay for the flowers. Like, that's what the life insurance partially pays for, and that and a lot of other things. Like, you don't want your policy to lapse because you made a mistake and you didn't look at the facts. You didn't look at the numbers. You just listened to some flashy salesperson trying to sell you something. Just please be smart about it. If IUL fits your needs and goals, by all means, buy IUL. But if you're looking to do IBC, I'm going to tell you this right now. IUL should never even come up in a discussion. Never at all. It will not suit you in using it for the infinite banking concept, ever. And if someone tells you that, put them on the phone with me, and I promise you it will be one hell of a debate, because they will be wrong and we will be right. But it's not just because we're right, it's because the math is in, and math doesn't lie. So with that being said, Craig, Stephen, anything you guys want to say before we close this thing out? Because I know we're getting on planes tomorrow. Some of our team is already on planes out there to Money Tank, Orlando, and I know we're going to see a whole bunch of you out there, which I'm super pumped about. But what do we got to close this sucker down?
Good stuff, man. Just if you want to schedule a call to review a policy, just talk about starting a new policy and getting into infinite banking, I'll put the link over in the chat box one more time. Our team of money mentors are standing by, ready to go, and they will walk you through it. And they prefer to do a Zoom call. So if you possible, schedule it to where you can be in front of your computer on your phone with the video on. So that way you guys can see each other. They can share screen. They can actually show you using the BYOB vault exactly what we're talking about. And, if you have an IUL or something, you can share that screen and we can go from there. Or they'll tell you how to get that in-force illustration so you know what your IUL is doing. A lot of people don't even know, don't review it once a year or once every couple of years, anything like that. So we'll hook you up with that. If you can't make it to Orlando, virtual tickets are on sale for Money Tank. So highly recommend getting a virtual ticket. It's $97. You get the recordings. Check it out. You can follow along from the comfort of your own home. And I do look forward to seeing a lot of you guys in Orlando tomorrow and this weekend. So safe travels to everyone out there. Thanks for being here today. This was a lot of fun. Thanks, Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. See you on the next one.